Welcome to part 4 of our DentSim orientation, and I'm going to take you through the Class 1 amalgam preparation of tooth number 36 using the DentSim software. In the software section of our CD orientation, you'll probably recognize, hopefully you'll recognize this area. I have clicked on this icon here. This is the icon that shows me my preparation measurements, our optimal tooth area. Now I'm going to go through the different cross sections here. You'll notice we have 5 different cross sections. The first cross section is our mesial distal cut, and that cut goes from the mesial to the distal through the center of the tooth. You'll notice the length of our preparation is 7.1 millimeters, the depth is basically 2 millimeters, and our wall angulation is 93 degrees, which tells us that these walls slightly, what we call, diverge. This is another term that I want you to understand. This is a term that will be used through the operative course. Let's go ahead and look at our next cut. Our number 2 cut is through the distal isthmus. There's that term I was telling you about. Our distal isthmus, as you remember from that picture before, is in this area here. You'll notice the width of the floor is 1.5 millimeters. The width of the occlusal is 1.3. The depth is basically 2 millimeters. And our wall angulation is 85 degrees, which tells us that these walls actually, what we call, converge. They converge towards one another. This is another retentive feature of our amalgam preparation. Let's look at the next cut. Number 3 is our facial lingual cut or buccal lingual cut. This goes right through the center of the tooth here, buccal to lingual. You'll notice the width of that portion of our preparation is 4 millimeters wide. The walls are 90 degrees, basically parallel to one another. And I'm sorry about this slide, but the depth here too is about 2 millimeters. Okay, our next cut, number 4, is through our mesial isthmus. There's that term again. You're going to see this quite often. This is our mesial isthmus here between our mesiobuccal and mesiolingual cusps. You'll notice that the floor is 1.8 millimeters wide, the occlusal is 1.5. Again, these walls converge. And you'll notice too that the depth is basically 2 millimeters. And the last cut is our distal facial cut. This cut comes through the tooth in this area here. You'll notice that the width of our floor is 2.9 millimeters, 2.8 on the occlusal. Basically 2 millimeters deep. The reason this one is closer to 3 is because this part of the preparation does go up on the cusp tip a little bit, which makes it a little bit deeper, or seems to be deeper. And our angulation of our walls, our facial wall or buccal wall, actually diverges a little bit, and our lingual wall converges a little bit. Okay, now once I've gone through my optimal area, I'm going to click back on the optimal tooth icon here, and it's going to put me right back in the working area here. You'll notice I've chosen my burr. I'm going to use a 245. My handpiece is on high speed. I've already clicked on start and I'm ready to start cutting. So the first cut that I'm going to make is going to be from the distal pit across this central groove through the central pit on through the central groove into the mesial pit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to first of all put the burr into the handpiece. This is a 245 pear-shaped burr. I wanted to let you see what it looks like. The cutting surface on this burr is 3 millimeters long. The tip of the burr is 0.8 of a millimeter wide. As you're cutting, you can gauge how deep you're cutting by looking at how much of this cutting surface is still exposed above the occlusal surface of the tooth. If there's about a millimeter exposed above, then you know you're cutting about 2 millimeters deep. You'll notice too that when you're talking about the width of your preparation, you can kind of gauge it a little bit by the width of the tip of the burr, which is 0.8 or almost a millimeter wide. Okay, so I've gone ahead and made my cut. I've started in the distal pit here, gone across the occlusal surface through the central pit and into the mesial pit. Once I've done this, I'm going to go into the evaluation area. This is the cut as it looks on the screen. I'm going to click on the evaluation button here, and it's going to ask me if I want to be evaluated, and I'm going to say yes. So it's going to go ahead and evaluate me, so I'm going to go ahead and click into that area. Here we are in the evaluation area. You'll notice now that we have a list of messages. When you went through the software portion of our CD orientation, I wasn't able to show you any messages, but now that we're doing an actual preparation, you'll get to see them. Now within the cross-sectional area, and that's where we are right now, we have some different tools that we can use. If I want to do a measurement here, if I want to see how deep my preparation is compared to the optimal, what I can do is I can right click on my mouse and I'll have an option to click on measurement or dynamic cut. I'm going to click on measurement, And when I do, I can come over and I can actually do a measurement to see how deep the optimal is, and then I can come down here and do the same with mine. I've made a measurement here, and the measurement will show up here. The distance will show right up here on the upper left hand side. This depth here is 2.1 millimeters. Now I can do this as many times as I need to through any cross section of this tooth. Now another tool that I have is dynamic cut. I can right click again, click on dynamic cut, and I can do any cross section that I like. And as soon as I do a cross section through either the student tooth or the optimal tooth, it will show up in either. So it will always give me a comparison of the cross sections. Now you'll notice too that my grade is 32. This software doctrine grades you from 0 to 100, so as you make your preparation better, your grade gets better. Another method of measuring is if I come up here and click on the little icon here, the little 1/2 millimeter icon, it will create a grid, and then I can actually count in 1/2 millimeter increments how wide my preparation is or how wide the optimal preparation is. I can also click on the other icon, which will give me a method of counting the depth in 1/2 millimeter increments as well. So you have plenty of different options to use within this window. Alright, let's go down the list here of messages. This is our residual caries area. You'll notice that the caries is in red. I still have a little bit of caries left in the distal pit. I went ahead and blew this picture up a little bit. This is our outline centralization area. You'll notice that the optimal outline is in dark blue, and my cut is actually sort of a pink color. But what this does, this lets me know if I'm within the parameters of the outline shape, and I am if you look at this picture here. Okay, let's look at floor depth. You'll notice that on our gauge here, shallow is brown, teal is optimal, and then as we get deeper we start to get in the red area. You'll notice I'm shallow in our mesial and distal area, and in the central pit area I'm basically to the depth I want to be. And you'll notice too, within floor depth there is a detail of errors. You'll find this in each one of these areas. It's telling me here the shallow floor in the mesial, shallow floor in the distal. There is one point that's been reduced because of how shallow it is in the mesial. There's also been 1 point reduced for the shallow and the distal. That's where these 2 points come from. I can get these 2 points back if I go in and correct these areas, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, now we're into wall inclines. What this talks about, again, it gives me a list of detail of errors up here of the wall angulations. Now if I have a problem with the wall angulation being off, then again I'm going to have an error up here to describe where the discrepancy is, and I can go back and fix it. Again, you'll notice that I've had 1 point reduced for this particular error. So every time you click on an error, you can look down here to see how many points have been reduced and how many you might be able to get back. Okay, let's go ahead and go into outline shape. Outline shape is our most important area. This is the area that we work in until we are no longer failed. Failed does not mean that you have actually failed this preparation. It just simply means that you have not improved your outline form well enough to pass. So again, we're going to go up to these list of errors, and we're going to start in the distal, and we're going to go through these errors one at a time, correcting them until we are no longer failed in outline shape. I don't care about these points here. I can always come back later and get those. So our first error tells me that our distal facial or distal buccal area is not fully included. That's this area right here where this cross section is. I need to extend my preparation. So I'm going to click on the evaluation button again. It's going to put me right back in the working area, and I'm going to make my cut. And here's my cut. I went ahead and extended out basically into that distal buccal groove. And notice I'm starting to create my dovetail. Once I've done this, I'm going to go right back in. I'm going to click on the evaluation button, and you'll notice that that error is gone. So now I'm going to move to the next one. My distal isthmus, there's that term again, is too narrow. If you look at this picture here, you'll notice that the darker blue is the optimal. My isthmus is a little bit narrow on the lingual surface. That's in this area right here. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to click on the evaluation tool again, go right back in the working area. Notice I'm going to get 1 point back for fixing that. And I went ahead and widened it in this area here on the lingual. I'm going to click on the evaluation button again. Notice that error is gone. Okay, and you can see the changes I'm making in the preparation as I'm cutting it. You can also see a little bit of the changes here on the virtual tooth. Alright, our next error tells us that our lingual fissure or lingual groove is not fully included. You'll see here where the preparation goes into the lingual groove. I need to take mine into the lingual groove. Again, I'm going to press on the evaluation button, and here's my cut. I've gone into that lingual groove now. Again, once I've done that, I'm going to click on the evaluation button, and you'll notice that error is gone. So we're going to continue on down the road here. It's going to say our facial fissure is not fully included. I've got to go to the facial or the buccal groove now, just like here, and extend into that. So I'm going to click on the evaluation button, go back into the working area, and make my cut. Here's my cut right here. And now, since I've done that, I'm going to go back into the evaluation, and you'll notice that error is gone as well. You'll also notice that I've corrected enough of the outline shape that I'm no longer failed. So I've gone from a 34 to an 88 by simply sticking with my outline shape and correcting it. We're going to go ahead and continue correcting the outline shape here. Our facial aspect of our mesial isthmus, there's that term again, is not fully included. That means in this area right here, it's not wide enough. So I'm going to click on the evaluation button. I'm going to go right back in. Here I've widened it right in this area here. Here's our mesial isthmus. Here's our distal isthmus. I'm going to click on the evaluation button. I'm going to go right back in. You'll notice now my grade has jumped to a 91. The only point left that I can get is by correcting my mesial isthmus. There's that term too. It's still too narrow. And you can see where mine is narrow here. So I'm going to go back into the evaluation. Or back in the working area by clicking on the evaluation button. And I'm going to correct that. And here it goes. I went ahead and widened my isthmus there a little bit. Now I'm going to go back. I'm going to click on the evaluation button again. And you'll notice now my outline shape is taken care of. My grade now is a 94. So now that I've corrected all of that, I can go into floor depth and wall incline and try to correct these to get more points back. Okay? So floor depth is telling me that my floor is shallow in the distal area. There's 1 point that I can get back for that. You'll notice here. Also, wall inclines. There's 1 point I can get back by correcting my lingual wall of the mesial isthmus. You'll notice here the lingual wall of the mesial isthmus, it says is successfully inclined lingually. Here it is. It is. Remember, our isthmus areas, our walls are supposed to converge, not diverge. You'll notice here it converges, so I've got to go back in and fix that. I'll take my burr and I'll come in at this angle here and simply remove a little bit of tooth structure here to make that wall converge now. Okay, next one, our buccal fissure wall or facial fissure wall is insufficiently inclined facially. I've got mine converging when it should be parallel or slightly diverging. You'll notice again a point I can get back. Lingual wall of distal isthmus is successfully inclined lingually. Again, my isthmus areas and my walls are supposed to converge, not diverge. My buccal wall converges, but my lingual wall, it's telling me is not, and sure enough it's not. So again, we'd have to go in and fix that. Facial wall of our distal area is insufficiently inclined facially. Again here, it needs to be more parallel, as we see here. Alright, and let's look at the last one here. Lingual wall of our distal area is successfully inclined lingually. Again, here it is going to the lingual when it should be converging just a little bit. Okay? Alright, I'm going to go back in. I'm going to fix as much as I can with these, getting back as many points as I can. So I've done that now. Now my grade's a 99. I have 1 point left that I can get in order to get 100. What happens is when you get down to 1 point, this is basically an amount of tooth structure that you basically wouldn't even see with the naked eye that you're removing. The basic standard, the standard deviation on these machines, on these DentSim units, is about 300 microns. So what you'd want to do is come back in and very gently try to correct this area. And what it's saying is the lingual wall of the distal area is successfully inclined lingually. Again, that's this area here. I'd have to bring my burr in at this angle to correct that. Okay, but what happens is if you go in and you get a little bit too aggressive, what can happen is this. You can start taking too much and you start getting over reduction errors or damage to the distal marginal ridge. We've gone into the distal marginal ridge here too far. You can see it here. You can start having points deducted. Now I've gone from a 99 to a 52 in the blink of an eye. So we always want to make sure we be as conservative as we can as we're cutting, especially at the beginning. Okay, this concludes part 4 of our DentSim orientation. We'll go ahead and move right into part number 5.